My daughter called me on a Tuesday evening and asked me to come to her divorce party. I thought she was joking. A divorce party? Yes. To celebrate getting divorced? Yes, Dad. She sounded completely serious. I sat down at the kitchen table. When is it? Friday. Who's coming? Mom, some friends, a few people from work. She paused. And Mark? I stopped. Mark is coming? Yes. Emily, he's your ex-husband. I know. And you're having a party because your marriage is over. I know. So why is he coming? I'll explain when you get here. That answer bothered me more than anything else. Before we hung up, she added, "There's one thing I need you to promise." What? Don't give me advice. I laughed. About the divorce? About anything. That's a pretty difficult thing to ask your father. I know. She paused. Just come as my dad. Then she hung up. I sat there looking at my phone. I had no idea what she meant. At the time, I thought I knew exactly what the party was about. I thought Emily had finally realized I had been right about Mark. I'd never hated him. That would have been easier. If he'd cheated on her, lied to her, or treated her badly, I could have pointed to something concrete. But Mark had never given me that. He was polite. He worked hard. He remembered birthdays. He helped around the house. Whenever Emily needed something, he was usually the first person there. And yet, from the moment I met him, something about him bothered me. I couldn't explain it. The first time Emily brought him home, she was 24. She was sitting beside him at our dinner table, smiling at everything he said. After dinner, she followed me into the kitchen. So what? What do you think? I dried my hands and thought about it. He seems like a good guy. She smiled. But, there is no but. There is always a but with you. I laughed. Then I said, I just don't think he understands you. Her smile disappeared. What makes you say that? I don't know. Then maybe don't say it. At the time, I thought she was being defensive. Now I understand she was already trying to set a boundary. I just didn't recognize it. They got engaged 6 months later. A few weeks before the wedding, Emily came to my house alone. She sat at the kitchen table, turning her phone over and over in her hands. You okay? Yeah. You sure? She nodded. Then she said, I'm scared. I remember those words perfectly, because I misunderstood them completely. I assumed she was scared of marrying Mark. I thought maybe she had finally realized what I had sensed from the beginning. So I told her she didn't have to go through with the wedding. I told her marriage was too important to enter with doubts. I told her that if she wasn't sure, she should walk away. I even spoke to Mark. I didn't threaten him. I simply told him that Emily needed to know she was free to change her mind. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, I know. That answer irritated me. I expected him to defend himself. Instead, he just accepted it. Emily married him 3 weeks later. For a while, everything seemed fine. They bought a house. They traveled. They hosted Christmas. Emily called less often, but I told myself that was normal. She was married. She had her own life. Whenever I asked how things were going, she said, We're good. Not great. Not happy. Just good. Then, after 7 years of marriage, they separated. I remember the phone call. Emily sounded exhausted. Dad, Mark and I are getting divorced. I stood in my garage with the phone against my ear. Did he do something? No. Did you? No. Then what happened? She was quiet. I don't think we're supposed to be married anymore. I didn't understand. How can you know that? I just do. The divorce became final, 6 months later. And now she wanted to celebrate it. Part of me was worried about her. Part of me felt relieved. And, if I'm being honest, part of me felt something worse. I felt vindicated. I had never said, I told you so, but somewhere in the back of my mind I had thought it. I hated myself for that. On Friday evening, I drove to Emily's apartment. Music was playing before I even reached the door. There were cars parked along the street. When I walked inside, one of her friends handed me a drink. Welcome to Freedom Night, I smiled. Is that what we're calling it? Tonight, yes. Emily came over and hugged me. I'm glad you came. I said I would. You almost didn't. I considered it. She pulled away. Why? I wasn't sure celebrating a divorce was a good idea. She smiled. Neither was I. Before I could ask what she meant, someone called her from across the room. She walked away. I looked around. There was a cake on the kitchen counter. Written across it were the words, Finally free. People were laughing. Someone had put old wedding photographs into a box marked, Things were done with. Everything looked exactly like the kind of party I'd expected. Except for Emily. She kept looking toward the front door. Once. Then again. I followed her eyes. She was waiting for someone. I already knew who. The door opened. Mark walked in. He stopped just inside. The room didn't become silent, but the energy changed. Emily saw him and smiled. She walked straight toward him. They hugged, not like a married couple, not like enemies, just two people who had spent 7 years knowing each other better than almost anyone else. I watched them from across the room, and for the first time that night, I wondered if I'd misunderstood everything. Because if this was really a party celebrating the end of Emily's marriage, why had she been waiting for her ex-husband to arrive? Mark saw me watching him and gave me a small nod. Then he walked over. "Mr. Carter!" "Mark!" We shook hands. I studied his face, looking for something I couldn't name. Anger, jealousy, regret, anything that would explain why he'd willingly walked into a room full of people celebrating the end of his marriage. Instead, he looked nervous. "I didn't know you were coming," I said. "Neither did I." That made me smile. "Emily invited you." "Yes." "So you came." "She asked me to." He glanced across the room. Emily was talking to one of her friends, but she looked over at us. Mark noticed. "She really wanted you here," he said. "You've mentioned that." "I know." "Why?" He looked at me for a moment. Then he said, "You'll understand." I didn't like that answer. Before I could ask anything else, Emily walked over. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I said. She looked at Mark. "You made it." "I told you I would." She smiled. Then she looked at me. "I'll be right back." She walked away. Mark watched her go. I asked the question I'd been thinking about since he arrived. "Do you still love her?" He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "I care about her." That wasn't my question. "I know." He looked down at his drink. "I don't think love is the reason we should stay married." That surprised me. "You're not trying to get her back?" "No." "You're okay with this?" "No." He looked at me. "But being hurt doesn't mean the divorce is wrong." I didn't know what to say to that. For years, I'd imagined Mark as the man who had taken my daughter away from me. Now he was standing in front of me talking about her divorce as if he had already accepted something I was still trying to understand. The party continued around us. Someone brought out champagne. Megan, Emily's best friend, stood on a chair and raised her glass. "To Emily." Everyone cheered. "To new beginnings." More cheers. Emily laughed. But when Megan made a joke about Emily being back on the dating market, Emily's eyes briefly moved toward Mark. He didn't laugh. Neither did she. I noticed the bracelet on Emily's wrist. It was silver. I'd seen it before. Mark had given it to her on their 5th anniversary. "You still wear that?" Emily looked down. "This?" "Yes." She touched it. "I like it." Mark looked away. I didn't say anything else. Later I found Emily alone in the kitchen. She was pouring herself another drink. "Can I ask you something?" "You're going to anyway." "Why is Mark here?" She sighed. "Because I invited him." "I know." "Then why ask?" "Because this is a divorce party." "I know." "Oh, and he's your ex-husband." "I know that too." I lowered my voice. "Do you still love him?" She looked at me. "I care about him." That sounds like something Mark just said. Maybe because it's true. I leaned against the counter. "Then why did you divorce him?" She was quiet. "We stopped being good for each other." "That's it?" "That's enough." I didn't know how to respond. There was no dramatic betrayal, no secret, no villain. Just two people who had decided they couldn't continue being married. "Are you happy?" She smiled. "I don't know." That answer bothered me. "You're the one who wanted this party." "I know." "You called it a celebration." "I know." "Then why don't you sound happy?" She looked down at her glass. "Because ending something can be the right decision and still hurt." I thought about that. Then I asked, "Is this about Mark?" She shook her head. "No." "Then what is it about?" She looked at me. "Do you remember what you told me before the wedding?" I knew immediately. "I told you I didn't trust him." "No." "You said I didn't understand him." "No." She looked at me. "You told me I didn't understand you." I didn't remember saying that. She did. "You said I was too young to know what I wanted." I felt uncomfortable. "I was worried about you." "I know." "You were scared." "I was." "I thought you were scared of marrying him." She shook her head. "I wasn't." I stared at her. "Then what were you scared of?" She took a breath. "I was scared of making a decision you couldn't forgive me for." I didn't speak. The music from the living room seemed suddenly far away. "Emily, I know you were trying to protect me." "I was." "I know." She looked at me. "But that's not the same as trusting me." I felt my chest tighten. "You think I didn't trust you?" "I think you trusted yourself more." I didn't have an answer. She continued. "When I told you I was scared, you immediately started telling me what I should do. I was trying to help." "I know." "Then what are you saying?" She looked toward the living room. "I'm saying that when I married Mark, I wasn't just choosing him." She paused. I was choosing a life that I needed you to believe was the right one. I stared at her. You married him because of me. No, she answered quickly. I chose him. Then she lowered her voice. But I spent 7 years trying to prove to you that I'd chosen correctly. That sentence stayed with me. I thought about every time she'd called after an argument. Every time I'd asked whether everything was okay. Every time she'd said, "We're good." I had always assumed she was defending Mark. Maybe she'd been defending herself. I looked at her. Did Mark know? Yes. About this? Yes. What did he say? She smiled sadly. He told me I didn't have to prove anything to you. I looked toward the living room. Mark was standing near the window. For the first time, I wondered how much he'd understood that I never had. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew what you'd do. What? You'd try to fix it. I almost denied it. Then I stopped. She was right. I had spent her entire life believing that being her father meant solving problems before they became disasters. I thought that was love. Maybe sometimes it had only been fear. Fear that if I didn't guide her, something terrible would happen. I'd blame myself. Emily touched my arm. I didn't invite you here to blame you. Then why? She looked at me. I need you to see something. What? She didn't answer. Instead, she walked toward the living room. I followed. She stopped beside Mark. For a moment, they looked at each other. Then Emily said, "Tell him." Mark looked uncomfortable. "I don't think I should." "You promised." He sighed. Then he looked at me. "The first time you warned me about marrying Emily, you told me she was afraid." I nodded. "I remember." Mark continued. "You thought she was afraid of me." He paused. "She wasn't." He looked at Emily. "She was afraid of disappointing you." And suddenly, the entire party felt different. I didn't know what to say. For years I had believed Emily was afraid of marrying Mark. Now I was hearing something completely different. She hadn't been afraid of him. She had been afraid of me. I looked at Mark. "How did you know that?" He hesitated. "Because she told me." "When?" "Before the wedding." I looked at Emily. "You talked to him about this?" "Yes." "And not me?" She looked down. I tried. "That hurt more than I expected." "When?" "You remember the night I came to your house? The night you told me you were scared?" "Yes." "You could have told me." "I was trying to." I remembered that night, the kitchen table, her hands around a cup of coffee, the way she'd avoided looking at me. I had spent years remembering only one thing: I'm scared. I'd never remembered everything that came after. "What did you try to tell me?" She looked at me. "I told you I didn't know if I was ready. And I told you that was normal." "No." She shook her head. "You told me that if I had doubts about Mark, I shouldn't marry him." I felt my face grow warm. "I thought you were talking about him." "I wasn't." "What were you talking about?" "Myself." She paused. "I was scared of getting married. I was scared of leaving home. I was scared of becoming responsible for another person. I was scared of making a huge decision." She looked at Mark. "And I was scared of disappointing you." I didn't speak. Mark stepped back. "I'll give you two some space." Emily stopped him. "No, stay." He looked at her. She nodded. He should hear this too. Mark stayed. Emily took a breath. "When you told me not to marry Mark, I didn't hear, 'Take your time.'" She looked directly at me. I heard, "If you marry him, I'll think you've made a mistake." I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to tell her that wasn't what I meant. But I knew that wasn't what mattered. "What happened after that?" I asked. "You called Mark." I remembered. "I just wanted to talk to him." "I know. What did he say to you?" Emily looked at Mark. "He told me I didn't have to choose between him and you." Mark nodded. "I meant it, but I still felt like I did." She looked back at me. "And that's what I never told you." I sat down. The party was still happening in the other room. People were laughing. Someone had turned the music up. It felt strangely wrong. My daughter was telling me something that had apparently been sitting between us for 7 years, while 20 people celebrated around the corner. "Why did you stay married for 7 years?" I asked. She took a long breath. "Because I loved him." That answer was simple. "But," she looked at Mark, "but I also wanted to prove you wrong." Mark closed his eyes briefly. I looked at him. "You knew?" "Yes." "And you stayed?" "I loved her." I didn't know what to say. Mark continued, "But eventually it became impossible." "What became impossible?" "Being married to someone who was always wondering whether she had made the right choice." Emily looked down. "We started arguing about things that weren't really about us," she explained. "A disagreement about money wasn't just about money. An argument about moving wasn't just about moving. A conversation about having children wasn't just about children. Every major decision somehow became a question of whether she was making a choice her father would approve of. And Mark had started to feel like he wasn't married to Emily alone. He was married to the version of Emily that was constantly trying to prove something to me. I felt sick hearing it. "Why didn't you tell me?" Emily gave me a tired smile. "Because what would you have done?" I didn't answer. She did it for me. "You would have tried to help." "I would have. And you would have told me what you thought." "Probably. And then I'd have spent another few years wondering whether you were right." I looked down. For the first time, I understood why she had stopped calling me about important decisions. I had thought she was becoming distant. Maybe she was trying to become independent. Then Mark said something quietly. "That's why we decided to divorce." I looked at him. "You divorced because of me?" "No." He shook his head. "We divorced because our marriage had become something neither of us wanted." He paused. "But the problem that brought us there wasn't really you." "What was it?" Emily didn't know how to make a choice without needing someone else to tell her it was okay. Emily looked at him, and he got tired of waiting for me to become someone I wasn't. Mark smiled sadly. "I didn't want you to become someone else." He looked at her. "I wanted you to stop being afraid of disappointing everyone." Emily's eyes filled with tears. I looked away. I didn't want them to see mine. After a moment, I asked, "So the divorce party?" Emily nodded. "What is it really for?" She smiled. "That depends on what you think." I almost laughed. "You've been doing that all night." "Doing what?" "Giving me half an answer. Maybe because you always rush to fill in the other half." That was fair. She walked over to the table and picked up a small envelope. I'd noticed it earlier but hadn't thought much about it. She held it out. "This is for you." I took it. "What's this?" "I wrote it 7 years ago." I looked at the handwriting. My name was on the front. "Why didn't you give it to me?" "Because I wasn't ready." I turned the envelope over. "What's inside?" She looked at me. The truth. I didn't open it, not yet. Instead, I asked, "Why now?" She glanced around the room. At the cake, at the photographs, at Mark, then back at me. "Because I'm finally ready to make another decision." I frowned. "What decision?" She smiled. "That's what I need you to hear." And for the first time that night, I realized the divorce might not have been the reason she'd invited me at all. I took the envelope home that night. I could have opened it at the party. Part of me wanted to, but something told me that if Emily had waited 7 years to give it to me, I could wait one more night. I put it on the kitchen table and stared at it for almost an hour. My name was written across the front. Just, Dad. No explanation, no date, nothing else. The next morning, I finally opened it. There were 3 pages inside. The first line made me stop. "Dad, I'm getting married today." I kept reading. She wrote about how excited she was, how much she loved Mark, how terrified she was. But then she wrote something I hadn't expected. "I'm not asking you to approve of my decision." I read that sentence twice. Then the next one. "I'm asking you to still love me if you think I'm making the wrong one." I put the letter down. I had to walk away from the table because I suddenly remembered the conversation we'd had before her wedding. I remembered telling her that she could still change her mind. At the time, I'd thought I was giving her freedom. Now I wondered if I'd actually been telling her that I would be disappointed if she didn't. I went back to the letter. The final paragraph said, "I hope someday I can make a decision without wondering whether you'll still be proud of me afterward." There was no accusation, no anger. That somehow made it worse. I called Emily. She answered immediately. "Did you read it?" "Yes." She was quiet. "What do you think?" I didn't know how to answer. "I think I owe you an apology." She didn't respond. "I thought I was giving you permission to choose." "You were trying to." "I didn't realize I was making you feel like you needed permission." Another silence. Then she said, "I know you didn't mean to." That sentence hurt too, because I knew she was telling the truth. I had never meant to control her. I had just been so afraid of something happening to her that I had slowly convinced myself my fear was wisdom. "Why did you give me the letter now?" "Because I wanted you to understand why I couldn't celebrate the divorce with you unless you knew the whole story. I thought you wanted me there because you were finally free of Mark." "I am free. From him?" She paused. "From a lot of things." I didn't ask her to explain. She had spent years trying to explain things to me. This time I decided to listen. She asked, "Can you come over?" "Of course." When I arrived, Mark was there too. He was sitting at the kitchen table. I almost turned around. Emily stopped me. "Stay." I sat down. Mark looked at me. "I read the letter," I said. He nodded. "I know. You knew about it." "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it wasn't mine to tell." That answer made sense, more than I wanted it to. Emily sat across from us. I asked you both here because I don't want anyone leaving this conversation thinking there was one person to blame. I looked at Mark. He nodded. Emily continued. Mark wasn't a bad husband. Mark looked uncomfortable. You don't have to say that. I do. She looked at me. And Dad wasn't a bad father. I shook my head. Emily, no, let me finish. She took a breath. My marriage ended because it stopped being right for me. She looked at Mark. And because Mark deserved a wife who wasn't constantly trying to prove something. Then she looked at me. And because I deserved to make decisions without hearing your voice in my head every time. I didn't know what to say. Mark finally spoke. You know what the strange part is? What? You were right about one thing. I looked at him. About what? Emily was scared. He smiled faintly. You just guessed the wrong reason. I almost laughed. It was the first time that conversation had felt even slightly lighter. What was she scared of? Mark looked at Emily. She was scared that if she chose wrong, she'd lose you. Emily nodded. And now? She looked at me. Now I'm scared of something else. What? That I'll spend the rest of my life making choices based on what other people think. I understood then why she had called it a divorce party. It wasn't really a celebration of the marriage ending. It was a celebration of something ending inside her, the part of her that had spent years asking whether everyone else would approve. I looked at her. What are you going to do? She smiled. This is the part where you usually give me advice. I smiled back. I'm trying something new. What? What? Listening. She laughed. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out another envelope. This one was unopened. What is that? My job offer. I frowned. What job offer? I've been offered a position in Colorado. I stared at her. Colorado? She nodded. I've been thinking about moving. How long? A few months. And you're going? I think so. My first instinct was immediate. Where would she live? Was the job secure? Could she afford the move? Was she sure? I felt all those questions rising at once. Then I remembered the letter. I'm asking you to still love me if you think I'm making the wrong one. I looked at my daughter. She wasn't asking me what I thought. She was telling me what she had decided. And for once, I didn't need to be the person with the answer. I looked at the job offer again. Colorado. It felt very far away. For most of Emily's life, I'd been the person she called when she didn't know what to do. Now she had made a decision without asking me. And strangely, that didn't make me angry. It made me realize how much I'd missed. You've already accepted it? I asked. Not yet. I almost felt relieved. Then she smiled. But I'm going to. I nodded. Okay. She looked surprised. That's it? What do you want me to say? I don't know. I could tell you it's too far away. You could. I could ask whether you've thought about everything. You usually do. I smiled. But I'm not going to. She looked down. Thank you. Mark stood up. I should go. Emily nodded. He stopped at the door. Emily. She looked at him. I'm proud of you. She smiled. Thank you. Then he looked at me. She's going to be okay. I almost said I know. Instead I said, I hope so. He smiled. That counts. Then he left. I sat with Emily for a while. Neither of us said much. Finally she asked, Are you disappointed? I looked at her. No. She waited. Are you sure? I thought about the question. I've spent a lot of time thinking I had to approve of your decisions. She said nothing. I don't. She smiled. You don't have to pretend you're happy about everything I do. I know. You can disagree with me. I probably will. She laughed. But I don't want you making choices just to make me happy. Her eyes filled with tears. I've wanted to hear you say that for a long time. I reached across the table and took her hand. I wish you'd told me. I tried. I nodded. You did. That was difficult to admit, because I remembered all the times she had tried, and all the times I had answered before she could finish. That evening, we went back to the party. Nothing had changed. The same people were laughing. The same cake was sitting on the counter. The same box of wedding photographs was on the table. But I saw everything differently. Megan came over. Where have you two been? Emily smiled. Talking. About what? Emily looked at me. Dad's finally learning not to give advice. Megan laughed. I don't believe it. Neither do I said. Everyone laughed. Later, someone brought out a bottle of champagne. They poured Emily a glass. She raised it. To new beginnings. Everyone cheered. Then she looked at me. I raised my glass too. To yours. She smiled. And for the first time that evening, I didn't feel like I was celebrating the end of my daughter's marriage. I was celebrating the beginning of something I hadn't expected. Her life belonged to her. I could still be part of it. I I just couldn't be the one steering it. Near the end of the night, I found Mark standing outside. He was looking at the street. You leaving? Yeah. I stood beside him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, I owe you an apology. He looked at me. For what? For thinking you were the problem. He smiled faintly. I thought you hated me. I didn't. I know. I laughed. You're starting to sound like Emily. He laughed too. Then he said, You know, I never wanted you to disappear from her life. I looked at him. What do you mean? I knew how important you were to her. He paused. I just wanted her to stop feeling like she had to choose between us. I nodded. I understand now. He looked at me. Good. Then he left. I went back inside. Emily was standing alone in the kitchen, looking at the cake. Want some? No. It's your divorce party. You have to eat the divorce cake. She laughed. Fine. I cut 2 pieces. We stood at the counter eating cake like we had when she was a kid. After a few minutes, she said, Dad? Yeah? I'm still scared. I looked at her. This time I didn't assume I knew why. Of Colorado? She nodded. Of starting over? I smiled. That's okay. She looked at me. You're not going to tell me what to do? No. What if I make a mistake? I thought about that for a moment. Then you'll deal with it. She laughed. That sounds very supportive. I smiled. I'm working on it. She leaned against my shoulder. I love you, Dad. I love you too. And for once, neither of us needed to explain what that meant. The next morning, she accepted the job. She moved 3 weeks later. I helped her pack. I didn't ask whether she was making the right decision. I didn't tell her Colorado was too far. I didn't tell her she would regret leaving. I simply carried boxes to the car. When she closed the trunk, she looked at me. You really aren't going to give me advice? I smiled. I've said enough for one lifetime. She laughed. Then she hugged me. As she drove away, I stood in the driveway until her car disappeared. I was still worried. Of course I was. I was her father. That part would never change. But something else had changed. For the first time, I understood that worrying about someone and controlling their life were not the same thing. And maybe that was what Emily had been trying to teach me all along. 3 weeks after Emily moved to Colorado, she called me on a Sunday morning. Dad? Yeah? I have a question. I smiled. That sounds dangerous. She laughed. Do you regret not giving me advice? I thought about it. Sometimes. Why? Because I'm still your father. She was quiet. Then she said, I don't regret asking you not to. Neither did I. Emily told me the move had been difficult. The job was harder than she expected. Her apartment was smaller. She missed her friends. She even admitted that there had been nights when she wondered whether she'd made a mistake, but she stayed. Not because I told her to, not because anyone had convinced her, because it was her decision. And for the first time when she was struggling, she called me without asking what I thought she should do. She simply told me what was happening. I listened. Sometimes she wanted advice. Sometimes she didn't. I learned to ask. That became our new habit. One evening, she called me after a difficult day. I think I'm failing. You're not. How do you know? I don't. She laughed. That's a terrible answer. I'm trying to be honest. There was a pause. Then she said, Thanks, Dad. I realized something that night. I had spent years believing a good father should always have an answer. But sometimes the best thing I could give Emily was a place where she didn't need one. A few months later, Mark called me. We hadn't spoken much since the divorce. How are you? Good. How's Emily? She's doing well. He hesitated. I wanted to tell you something. What? I got a promotion. That's great. Yeah. There was another pause. Then he said, I've started seeing someone. I smiled. I'm happy for you. Thanks. Neither of us knew what else to say. Finally, he laughed. You know what's strange? What? I don't think either of us would have made it through that marriage if we'd kept trying to make Emily happy. I thought about that. I think you're right. She needed to make her own choices. Yes, and so did we. I smiled. That sounds like something Emily would say. It is. We laughed. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table. The same table where Emily had sat years earlier and told me she was scared. For the first time, I understood what she had actually been asking from me that day. She hadn't needed me to tell her whether to marry Mark. She needed me to tell her that whatever she chose, she wouldn't lose me. I had thought I was giving her freedom. What she needed was unconditional love. There was a difference. A year after the divorce party, Emily came home for Christmas. She brought no husband, no boyfriend, no big announcement, just herself. We cooked together. She complained about work. I complained about my back. We argued about what movie to watch. It felt ordinary, and that ordinary feeling meant more to me than I can explain. One evening, while we were cleaning up after dinner, she said, "Dad, yeah? Do you remember my divorce party?" I laughed. "How could I forget?" She smiled. "I was scared you wouldn't come." "Why?" "Because I thought you'd think I was celebrating something you didn't understand." "I did think that." She laughed. "I know." Then she became quiet. "I invited you because I wanted you to see me choose something." "You did." "No." She looked at me. "I wanted you to see that I could choose something you didn't choose for me." I nodded. "I understand now." She smiled. "Good." We went back to washing dishes. After a minute she said, "You know what the funny thing is?" "What?" "I didn't actually need you to agree with me." "I know. I just needed to know you'd still be there." I dried my hands. "I always will be." She looked at me. "I know that now." And that was the part I had wanted for years without knowing how to ask for it. Not obedience, not agreement, not even closeness. Trust. Her trusting me enough to make her own choices, and me trusting her enough to let her. I still worry about Emily. I probably always will. When she tells me she's moving, I worry. When she changes jobs, I worry. When she tells me she's dating someone, I worry. When she doesn't call for a few days, I worry. That's what being her father feels like. But now, when I feel that worry rising, I remind myself of something she taught me. My job isn't to make sure my daughter never makes a mistake. My job is to make sure she knows she doesn't have to be afraid of losing me when she does. Sometimes I still catch myself wanting to tell her what I think, and sometimes she still catches me. "Are you about to give me advice?" I smile. "Maybe." She laughs. "Don't." "Okay." And I mean it, because I finally understand what she meant when she asked me to come to her divorce party. She wasn't asking me to celebrate the end of her marriage. She was asking me to witness the beginning of her independence. She was asking me to watch her make a choice without asking whether I approved. And, for once, the most important thing I could do wasn't to tell her what I thought. It was simply to stay and let her choose.